Hello. We're finally making the Q&A video that I promised like 2 months ago. I'm so sorry. And if you're looking at the runtime, wondering what in the world, I'm sorry it's so long. I'm sorry. I really tried to answer all the questions while also not making it forever long. We cut it down. Trust me, we cut it down. It was much longer. Originally, this is going to be like a making pancakes and Q&A. Just a Q&A now. Grab a snack. Start an activity you've been meaning to do. Do some laundry. And we're just going to jump into the Q&A. Warning, I just redid my setup to try to make it more aesthetically pleasing. It's not going to be in the next shot. So that was a while ago. Let's jump in. If you see me looking this way, that's where I have all the questions on my screen. What are your pronouns? She, her. That's fine. When is your birthday? My birthday is November 30th. I was born in the 1900s. Do you have a pet, and is it a frog? I do not have a pet frog. I have one pet dog named Libby. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll sometimes see her in my stories. I will include little clips of her here. Just as a warning, Libby had distemper before we got her, and so she has like a little neurological twitch. It can kind of look like she's bouncing or like she has hiccups. It's pretty subtle now. She's happy and healthy though, so if you see her bobbing, just know that she's okay. There's nothing wrong with her. She is overall a happy, healthy dog. Have you ever played an instrument? Yes, I played piano as a child and also trombone. Not for very long. Do you have another job? I do not have another job. We'll get into that and do the next section, which is origin story questions, but I do not currently have another job. This is my job now. Do you have any other hobbies? I do. I go LARPing with my husband, which is live action roleplay. That will come up later. Any other hobbies? Any other hobbies? What do I do? This is pretty much all I do, to be honest. I'm trying to think. What do I enjoy doing outside of work? I was pretty into baking for a bit there, and I do still love it, which one of the questions as well was, do you still intend on making an actual frog cake? And I do. I need to go through and figure out all the materials that I need. I've done a lot of baking in my day, however, I haven't done a lot of cake decorating. And this is the perfect time to answer probably the most asked question I get, which is, what program do you use? I use Zbrush. People have also asked what programs I recommend. Zbrush I find is more so used in the industry. Fewer people use it just for fun now because it is kind of expensive. I do recommend trying out Nomad Sculpt, which is a cheaper alternative, and also Blender's out there. It's not quite the same, but there's Blender, which is free. Please note that I've only used Zbrush, so I can only vouch for that one. So I'm going to go into origin story questions. There were a lot of these, a lot of the similar ones, so I won't like read every single one. A lot of them are like, when did you start drawing? What got you into 3D art? So I'm just going to start from the beginning. So I've always been an artist. I've just, as long as I've been alive, I've been drawing, and luckily my family pushed me to pursue that. I was one of those weird kids who, instead of going out with friends often, I would just sit in my room and draw My Chemical Romance fan art. I will definitely be popping some of that on the screen right here. Yeah, that's what I did. And I kind of assumed that I would always be an artist. So I ended up going to college, Savannah College of Art and Design, for sequential art, which, if you are unfamiliar, is pretty much all things visual storytelling. So storyboard art, graphic novels, the big one, concept art, all that stuff. We couldn't afford for me to go for all 4 years, so I went to a few different community colleges for 2 years and then transferred in and did my other 2 years at SCAD. Afterwards, I kind of roamed and did a bunch of random freelance stuff. My bestie, Megan, she was moving out to California to find work in animation, and she was like, do you want to come with me? And I was like, definitely. And so we made the move out here because I'm now in California. And it took some time for us to get work. She got work because a friend got her the job, and then she got me a job. Unfortunately, that's how the whole industry works, so that's not unusual. Just to keep things as abbreviated as possible. I have since worked on several different shows as a background artist, sometimes a designer, sometimes a painter, or sometimes both, depending on what the project needed. I will list the shows I've been on here and share some of my work. So I did that for like 5 years. Pausing because I completely forgot to say that I also got the opportunity to create a graphic novel with my friends published by Penguin Random House around this time. And then the writer's strike happened, which went on for so long that they weren't even greenlighting new shows. And when it finally finished, everything was still at a standstill. And then even when things did get started back up, of course, the economy was kind of in the toilet. So they were not greenlighting nearly as much as they had before the strike. And so I kind of just stayed put looking for work. I was out of work for about a year with no end in sight. And my husband and I were like, well, we really should figure out a backup plan. Because while we can kind of get by on his income alone, it's definitely tight. Not ideal. We're gonna have to figure out another stream of income. While I was looking for work, I started making these illustrations. I wanted to draw cozy, cute art that would make a nice art print, but would also serve as background design portfolio. And so I worked on those in the meantime as a way to boost my portfolio and do something fun and keep my skills fresh. And so I was like, maybe I'll just put these up on Etsy and see if they do anything, see if I can start a little art shop with my stuff in it. And that brings us to the next chunk of questions, which is like, how did you get into 3D art? What was the first thing you printed? Have you ever sculpted traditionally? All that stuff. I'm gonna rewind a little bit. I mentioned before that my husband and I LARP, and at the LARP that we were going to, when we had first started playing, we learned that you can actually sell things that you made in-game, just for in-game money. You can't sell it for actual money. I don't know where it came from, but in my brain, it just popped in that I wanted to make little forest spirits, sprites that you could keep in your pocket. I was like, I'm gonna make these. And I did, and I sold a couple in-game, and it was fun. And my character is a moth fae fairy character named Sorrel. You can see where this is going. And so when my shop wasn't doing so well, I just had my art prints on it. It wasn't doing great. I don't think I made a single sale. My husband was like, well, what if you made other things? He's like, what about your little forest spirits that you make for LARP? He's like, you could always make those and sell them. And at first I was like, I don't know. And he really pushed me. He was like, yo, you should try it. Why don't you try it? And I was like, okay, I will try it. I will try it. So I got some good Sculpey and I made some concepts of things I wanted to make. And I got to work and realized that I freaking hate Sculpey. There are Sculpey artists out there who can do amazing things. Not me. And my husband had thrown out the idea of digitally sculpting and 3D printing. I'm like, we gotta do that option. And so I opened up Zbrush, which I was not completely new to. I had Zbrush back in college. My husband was a game design major, and so he was doing 3D art for games. So we had split a copy of it because I was interested in dabbling in 3D art. I was interested in doing concept art potentially, and as a concept artist, if you can do 3D as well, it really makes you a lot more desirable, or at least at the time it did. I would say like every 4 years I would open it up and kind of poke around before getting distracted by something else. So I wasn't completely new to ZBrush, but I didn't have a lot of sculpting experience. And so I opened up ZBrush and started messing with it. I started off just doing, again, more in the realm of forest sprites. So I started doing rock creatures, mushrooms, plants, things like that. And I had told my friend, bestie Megan, I had told her my plans of starting up a shop, selling little doodads. And I had showed her my 4 spirits that I had so far. She was like, you should make animals too. You should make a cat and you should make a frog. Everyone loves frogs. And I was like, you are totally right. Frogs are the best. I should totally make a cat and a frog. Cat did not go well. If you've seen my older videos, you've seen my first attempt at a cat. And then I made a frog, which of course when I looked up a reference, I found the African rain frog, who is the cutest frog in all the land. And I was like, I'm making that one. The funny thing was that no one in my life knew what the African rain frog was. My frog was a little scary. I thought he was cute. All of my friends and family, they kind of gave me one of those, oh, Megan very gently tried to tell me, no, okay, it wasn't gentle at all. She laughed at me and said, oh my God, Rachel, what is this? Because she thought it was scary. Everyone, my husband, my best friend, all of my friends, all of my family, they all thought he was scary. But I loved him. And it made me second guess everything. I was like, oh. He was actually the first thing that I 3D printed because I was so in love with him. I named him Gregor. Someone had asked, what was your first idea for 3D printing something? Well, my first idea was this rock guy. Well, it was a handful. I'll put pictures with like these little dudes. They were kind of what I was going to print first. The first one I actually printed was Gregor the frog, who was magnificent to behold because he's so round. I fell in love with him when I printed him. But again, everyone thought he was scary. And I kept messing around. And so while doing so, I made my little mushroom dudes and I loved them. I thought they were going to be a smash hit. I thought people were going to love them. And so I had started posting these on Etsy. And again, didn't get any sales. I think a month or 2 went by, but still no sales. I started looking at my analytics and I noticed that despite, I had all these mushroom boys up. I had Quincy and Pascal, all the different Pascals, and I thought they looked nice and the branding looked nice. And under all that, Gregor, I had 1 listing for a Gregor, the frog. I didn't really promote him. I didn't do any fancy branding, and yet he still was appearing in more searches than any of the others. He was just being seen more, which was a surprise because everyone told me he was terrifying. And so I was like, why don't I try making like an actually cute frog? If people like the scary one so much, they would love it if I made a cute one. And I was like, let's make a cute one. And the first thing that popped into my head, again, don't even know where it came from. I was just like, let's make a cute frog. What's a cute frog? A peach and strawberry frog. And that's kind of history on my channel because as soon as I posted the strawberry frog video, someone requested a mushroom frog. And as soon as I made the mushroom frog video, I started getting more requests, which just turned into what my channel is today, me making your frog requests. I've had a few comments where people like find my channel and like, Jesus, this woman likes frogs. Because they see this, they're like, clearly this woman just has a compulsion to make frogs. And I don't, I make them for you guys. And also because I enjoy doing it. Like, don't get me wrong. If I didn't like frogs, I wouldn't be making frogs. I mean, I love them, people love them. They're so malleable to make into things, which is a lot of fun. Like I made the bats, and as much as I love the bats, they're a little harder to make into food because they have a lot more things to add. Like they have the wings and the ears and all of that. And so they're not quite as malleable. Versus a frog, so like the African rain frog is just a blob with arms and legs and a frown. So you can turn anything into that. So that's why frogs and how I got started 3D sculpting. Where did you learn to sculpt digitally? Are you self-taught, and how long did it take you to get good at 3D modeling? I would say I am semi-self-taught. My husband has taught me everything that I know about Zbrush, and he has not necessarily taught me how to sculpt, but he has given me like tips and feedback along the way. I couldn't have gotten this far without him. So semi-self-taught. My husband was my teacher. So if you ignore all the times I dipped my toes into Zbrush a while back, I started digitally sculpting in January of this year. And this is where I am now as of August 2024. So 8 months they've been sculpting. How long did it take you to get good is kind of subjective. I will say, I think the point where I actually kind of felt confident, like when I did the cheeseburger frogs. Usually when I make a frog, I will show it to my husband and get his feedback on it because he'll give me good feedback. He'll be like, this form's a little weird here, it's not reading. Yeah, he'll give me great feedback. And the cheeseburger frogs were the first ones that I made where I didn't get any feedback from him. I made them from start to finish all on my own, and I sent them to him. He just gave me a those look like cheeseburgers. Like, you did a good job. I think that was the moment where I was like, okay, I've actually learned. Probably one of the most frequent questions I got was favorite frog, or top 3 favorite froggers, top 5 favorite froggers. Sorry, my husband decided that he had to eat lunch right now, and I said, no food for you, get back in there, I'm filming. All right, so we're gonna go through my honorable mentions for favorites, and then my top 3 and my number 1 favorite frog. Before we get started, let me know which one you think is my favorite, and then let me know if you were right. These are subject to change. I do make 2 new ones every week, and so I can't tell you what my favorite is gonna be in a few months' time. So don't hold me to these. Honorable mentions. First, I think would have to be the sushi that I made recently. Little focus on the little baby. He's just a sleepy little baby, and I love all of the different colors and textures involved. Another honorable mention is the wiener. I don't know, he's just so... My life flashed before my eyes. He's just so cartoony and delightful. And then one more honorable mention has to be the pancakes. They're a crowd favorite for a reason. The syrup on these are a little light. This is the one that I keep in my collection. I gave away all the perfect ones. My top 3 has to be, in no particular order, the s'mores. I know that you at home can't feel this, but he's just so satisfying to hold. He's just like a little sandwich. Next up is banana. And at first I was going to put the banana frog, but I think I prefer the banana bat. Please know that they both occupy equal space in my heart, and this was a very difficult decision. And the last one in my top 3 is also my number 1. It's the pickle. Did you see this coming? He's just so sweet and little. Someone also asked for my least favorite. I think after much deliberation, I think I have to go with either the raspberry. I wasn't really happy with how the first one, that's this one, came out, so I tried it again. I wouldn't mind redoing the raspberry at some point. This one was one of my earliest ones, and I don't think I hit the mark. And then another least favorite, I think it's gonna be the crumpy lemon. There's nothing wrong with them, I don't think. I just prefer the other lemons that came out, the emo and the sour one. Okay, next with the question of which Frogger took the longest to make and which one was the fastest to make. I think the cheeseburger might have been the longest, at least the longest to sculpt. Nah, longest to paint too. They have so many different colors to mask out, and it is also 3 frogs after all. So this one definitely, I would say, took the longest. And then the fastest one, oh, I don't have any with me at the moment. I think the apples were the fastest to make. Either apples or the blueberries. The apples are faster to sculpt, but the blueberries are slightly faster to paint. And the blueberries don't need as much sanding. So I guess it's a tie. It's a tie between the blueberries and the apples. Okay, another great question was, will you ever make any non-food frogs? Yes, I do fully intend on making non-food frogs. I just really like making food. Making food is fun, and I get to do great research when I do food frogs. But I do really want to make non-food ones. There's a lot of like flowers and leaves and trees. There's been a lot of suggestions like that, which sound like a lot of fun. Way back when I did do my attempt at a flower frog, which I think I mentioned in this video again, but no, I'm up. But he just kind of looks like an artichoke. Let me know if I should paint him up as an artichoke or try to pass him off as a flower. I was trying to go for like a dahlia vibe. Maybe in springtime I'll do a whole bunch of flower frogs. I think those would be adorable. Element frogs people have suggested, which sound like a lot of fun. Planets sound like a lot of fun. One person specifically asked if I could make a planet, what I would do. It has to be one with rings. I feel like that's the fun part of making a planet, is when I can add rings. The question is, do Saturn? Or is it, if I say Uranus, are people going to make fun of me? Is it Uranus? Maybe we'll do Saturn for that reason. We'll do maybe Saturn. Saturn would be my choice. Also, people asked, do you plan on branching out into other animals besides bats and frogs and salamanders? I haven't decided yet. Someone a while back had mentioned doing like corvids, crows and stuff. Those sounded fun. It was a lot of fun making a salamander, so I wouldn't mind necessarily making more. I don't want to branch out too much. I kind of like it being a little bit more focused. I'm also so easily distracted as it is that to add in like a mix-up of animals as well might be too much. I'm going to say a cautious maybe, mayhaps. Do you plan on branching out to other types of merch? I do. I am in the process of making enamel pins. Those will hopefully be available before the end of the year. I just ordered the samples, and so they're going to take a few weeks to come in, and if they look good, then I'm going to make an initial order. I don't know how many to order. So the first batch will definitely be a test. I would love to eventually make enamel pins of all of the frogs because it'll allow an easier way for people to collect them and at a lower price point, and in a way that I can actually keep them in stock. But it depends on how people receive them. If they do well, then awesome. And if not, meh. Will you ever release the STL files? Yes. I appreciate everyone's patience with this. Because my channel has grown so quickly, I'm trying to be very thoughtful about how and when and what files I release, because once I release them out in the world, it's like a door. Once that door is open, you can't close it. And I can say this is for personal use, not commercial use, as much as I want, but in order to enforce that, I need time, money, and lawyers. So I have been hesitant. I do eventually want to sell them, especially because it's one less thing that I have to maintain. It's just I put the files up and people can use them. I am more than happy to let my followers who can't get a hold of mine or they can't afford my frogs to be able to print their own. That's great. That's fantastic. It's just the nefarious side that gives me caution. We'll see. I am hoping to at least release a couple before the end of the year. My husband is loose. He's supposed to be staying in the bedroom. My coffee. There is a tiny bear in my mug. We're going to jump into some process questions. Number one question in this section is, what printer do you use? I use Anycubic's Photon Mono 2 and Mono 5. Was it your first choice and do you like it? Yes. Overall, I've had a very good experience. The Mono 2 is a great workhorse, budget-friendly option. It's, I think, one of the cheapest ones. Bare bones, there's no like fancy bells and whistles, but that said, you don't need a lot of those. It gets the job done, and I do recommend it. The Mono 5, I don't like the Mono 5 as much, purely because since it's meant to have more bells and whistles, I just feel like those are more points of failure, if that makes sense. I kind of like it just being basic. That said, I do use the M5s the most because they have a way bigger print bed. I do want to note that these are resin printers. Someone asked to describe the difference between resin and filament or an FDM printer. And also, have you ever used a filament FDM printer? I have not, personally. Both my husband and my father have used them quite a bit. The ones that they had were much older. The new ones coming out can do way more. Now, the difference between an FDM and a resin printer. So whenever people think of 3D printing, they're usually thinking of a filament FDM printer. And so it's when you have those giant spools of plastic that get heated and extruded out of a nozzle and it goes. So that's a filament printer. A resin printer takes liquid resin and cures it with UV light. If you imagine a model and slice it up into a bunch of cross sections, and it will cure each layer. And then there's thousands of them until it makes a finished model. That's a very rudimentary, basic explanation between the two. I was also asked to describe the pros and cons of working with resin versus other materials. So I'm going to compare resin versus filament printing. The biggest pro to resin printing is that you can get much higher resolution. Everyone asks how I get my prints so smooth, and it's simply because I'm using a resin printer. Filament printing just has, you can see more of the stepping. However, the big con to resin printing is that there are a lot of safety precautions you need to go through. You need to make sure that you have a respirator, that your printer is properly ventilated. The liquid resin is toxic, and so you have to dispose of it properly. So the barrier of entry to starting resin printing is a lot higher than starting filament printing. I wouldn't recommend starting resin printing until you've done a lot of research. You can also do casting resin, which is very similar, except it involves making a mold. However, in order to get a nice clean mold and clean casts, you really should have a vacuum chamber, which I currently do not have the space for. The big question is, how long does it take to make one Frogger from start to finish? I'll start by outlining just the general process because there were some questions about that as well. Very quick overview. You have sculpting, 3D printing, curing, sanding and patching, priming, and painting. Those are the main steps. It's difficult to estimate the times for how long it takes to finish a frog because there's a lot of dry time involved, and while that does include literal paint drying, anything like waiting for primer to cure, waiting for something to print, that's all considered dry time as well. So there's just a lot of dry time, a lot of sit and wait. As far as how long it takes to turn out a single frog, I would say it usually takes me maybe about 4 days from start to finish. Again, that's not all active time. That is, there's a lot of dry time involved. The fastest I've ever turned a frog around, I think, is 48 hours. Like if it's a simple sculpt that I can sculpt and print and sand and prime that day, and then paint it the next, like let it cure overnight and paint it the next day. I have done that once or twice. But again, it has to be a pretty simple model. It's not easy to do that if it's impossible to do that if it's a crazy model. Sculpting can take anywhere from an hour or two to all day, depending on how complicated the model is. I would say probably on average, I would spend maybe 3-ish hours sculpting. Printing, kind of in a similar vein. I would say on average, most take maybe 3 hours to print. Something like a blueberry is going to take like an hour and a half. Something like my long cucumber that I printed upright, he's going to take 7 hours. Then we have to cure them. I have a curing station which allows me to cure them within minutes. That draws a lot of power though, and also I'm not usually needing to cure them immediately, so I usually just sit mine outside in the sun. I live in Southern California. The sun is hot and intense. Things will cure out there relatively quickly, so when I have just dozens and dozens of models, I'll just stick them outside, rotate them every couple hours, and they're good to go. Next is patching and sanding. So if a model has supports, I'm going to have to sand where all the supports were, because even if they break away cleanly, there's usually a little bit of texture. So I'll go through and sand all of those bits. I'll sand if there's any visible print lines, I will try to sand them. It's not always easy to, so you may see them sometimes. I try to get any obvious ones. And then I'll also go through, even a perfect print might have little tiny pinholes, little holes that develop. They're usually pretty minor, sometimes they're not. But I'll go through and patch those with Tamiya putty, unless they're big, then I will use a Milliput or Bondo. And I need to prime them, and so I use Rustoleum's Sandable automotive primer, which is great. The only downside is it does have to cure before you can paint on it, which helps to solidify and make a nice, strong, sturdy barrier. And then painting can take, I'd say maybe another 2 to 3 hours, again, unless it's a very complicated model. A blueberry or an apple, a single blueberry or apple may only take me like 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes to paint. And then like a stack of cheeseburgers might take me 3 to 4 hours. Which leads in nicely to how many frogs do you work on at once? I usually have, I'd say 3 to 4 going at a time, simply because to make videos, because they take 3 to 4 days to turn around, if I don't have another one ready to go, it can really delay a video. So I'll try to sculpt a few and then print them while I'm painting up others. That way I can at least get them primed. And so hopefully if I'm like, oh, what video am I making this week? That way I can at least say like, oh look, I have 2 over here primed, ready to paint. We'll do those. Next, what is your favorite part of the process, and what place do you think you've had the most improvement/refinement in your craft? Oh, and what part's the most challenging? We'll answer those 3. They'll kind of go together. For a while, I think I would have said that sculpting was the most challenging. I do think that's actually the area that I've had the most improvement as I've become more comfortable with ZBrush, more comfortable making models. So I think sculpting is where I've improved the most. And I used to think that was the most difficult step. However, now I would definitely say the sanding and cleaning up process. And part of that is just because I hate sanding. I hate it so much. It's something that takes a lot of care and patience and skill as well, which part of that is just I have not taken the time to develop the skills because I hate sanding. And then my favorite part, sculpting is probably my favorite part of the process because you can sculpt it and like within a few hours you can be like, ta-da, I made something. I made a thing. I did it. It is done, even though it's far from done. But it feels like you finished a thing, which is very rewarding. And then painting would be a very close second because that's when you actually finish it. That's when you're like, okay, here's a gray pointy blob that kind of looks like candy corn. Now I'm gonna paint it and it's alive. My frog child is born. Have you considered turning the freaking frogs gay for Pride Month or really whenever? I have. I really wanted to make a pride frog for this Pride Month, but the way the timing ended up being, I wouldn't have been able to get them out. I wouldn't have had them available on my shop until the end or after Pride Month, which I know that people would still be very excited to have them. I know that Pride doesn't end when Pride Month ends. But I was bummed that they wouldn't get in time. And I had a lot on my plate at the time, so I was like, you know what? We're gonna just aim to do better next year. Any frogs that you would never make and why? Never is a strong word. We'll say excluding any like clearly problematic frogs. Ones that I would say I'm unlikely to make. Anything with like hard surface modeling, I just don't enjoy that very much. So that would be stuff like cars, like cars and trucks. But that might be all that I have in mind. Like vehicles are not very exciting to me. Not because I think they're a bad idea, but because the idea of sculpting a car kind of makes me want to pull my eyeballs out. And cars, they're not fun to draw, they're not fun to sculpt. The other one, this one might be controversial. Orangutan. This one I get asked for a lot, and it is purely because I don't think it would survive the process. Resin, when it gets thin, it gets so delicate and sharp. And I think by the time I got it printed and primed and painted, I would have broken off half the little hairy tines. It is an interesting challenge. So maybe, again, not never. I would attempt that before I would attempt a car. So maybe it would be an interesting challenge in the future. Currently, I don't think it's ever going to happen because it doesn't really sound possible. But who knows? How many frogs do you make for each restock? Do you hand make all the frogs by yourself? I do hand make all the frogs by myself. They are 3D printed, but I think some people think that you just push a button and they're done. Oh, I wish. Even the paint your owns take. I need to, after I print them, I need to clean them up, cure them, clean them up, sand, prime, touch up prime job probably, and prime again. And then of course painting them, I do still hand paint all of them. And if you have others like pancakes, I have to add fancy syrup to all of them. That's why it takes so long for me to restock. This number has varied because I've only had a few restocks since my channel blew up, and I take the information from one restock and kind of use that to inform the next one. And these numbers include painted and paint your own. So these are not all painted. I think I had a little over 100-ish for the first one. That's the one where I had restocked a bunch of different kinds, but not very much. Like I would do 3 to 8 of each model. And so for the next one, I limited the scope a little bit more so that I could make more of each model. And that one ended up having about 200. And then the following one, I think ended up having 230, 250. And this one I'm aiming to have, that one I am on track to hopefully have like 350. So this is my biggest yet, which is why it's taken me so long. And do you have a plan for when you can no longer keep up demand by yourself? We're there. It's now. The time I'm there now. Can currently not keep up with demand. My plan was for my husband to help me, was to hire him out as my little shop helper. The problem is my husband works for insert large company here, and he is technically not allowed to work on things like YouTube videos without approval from the higher-ups, which we did apply for, and we have been waiting. I think end of September will be the 3-month mark of when we applied. In an exciting update, he has been approved and I will be putting him to work. Do you have any plans to bring back some of your old mushroom boys, Pascal, Quincy, Ube, for a future project? Not at the moment. I'm not opposed to it necessarily. I did for a while want to make an emo Pascal or Quincy, and I really wanted to give him a captive bead ring going through his little mushroom hat, like a Prince Albert piercing. It would still be fun to make like an emo version, especially now knowing how many people still love Quincy and Pascal. Not off the table, but nothing immediately happening. Also, thank you for the love of some of my older models. It warms my heart that people are asking for Barnaby, Pascal, Quincy, Ferdinand. Okay, we're going into some like YouTube specific questions. When did you start your channel? Why did you start it? When did it really kick off? So I started it in December of 2023. So that's been about 9 months. I started it to try to grow an audience, try to grow a following for my little craft shop that I had started. It really kicked off when I had my first cake video. I put that up when I had 1,700 followers. And over the weekend, it jumped to, I think, 14,000 subscribers. It went nuts. It was insanity. So that was that's when things really started to take off. And I think after that, people found my 2 mushroom frogs and my caramel apple frogs. Those 2 really helped to boost. Those started doing really well in the algorithm. And those really propelled things further on top of, more cake. So April of 2024 is when things kicked off. Did you expect Froggers to do so well, or was it a surprise? It was a huge surprise. Well, I didn't expect anything to go viral the way it did, so it was a complete surprise. Though a very happy surprise. What is your most viewed video? It is the Almighty Cake Frog, the blue layer. Oh, I forget what number that is. I'll put it on the screen. That one by far with, I think it's sitting at 5 million views on YouTube, which is so weird. It was so weird to get to a point where one video hit 1 million, and to now be at a point where multiple videos are sitting at 1 million. Very strange, very strange. A close second on Instagram, my frog collection video. That one has 4 million on Instagram, which is nuts because none of my videos perform as well on Instagram. How long do your short form videos take to make? I would say maybe like 3-ish hours. The longest part is screenshotting all the suggestions and like placing them and having them like pop up one by one. That's the longest part. And then how long do you plan on making more Froggers? This is a whole career. I have no idea. I would love it to go on for as long as you all will continue watching. It's an amazing opportunity. I'm having so much fun. It is, as someone who has done a lot of freelance, it's so rewarding to be able to work on so many different creative outlets, because between the storytelling involved in the filmmaking part, the actual art that's involved in sculpting and painting, the branding of the shop and all of that, being able to have fingers and all of that, it's a blast. I love it. I am happy to continue making frogs and critters for your enjoyment for as long as YouTube will let me. I have a couple random questions that I did not film, so I'm just going to do a voiceover for them. This one is, how often do you read through the comments for ideas? And essentially, how do you pick an idea? And this can really vary. Now that I get so many ideas, I try to keep it somewhat seasonal, so if you have a summery idea in the summertime, I'm going to be more likely to pick it. Just makes it a lot of fun for my shop. It makes for a good theme. We love a good theme. That said, if there is a sudden influx in one specific idea, I will jump on it. For example, around summertime, there was suddenly a boost in the amount of sushi comments I was getting, so I decided maybe I should finally make sushi. Also, sometimes one random idea will just really inspire me so much that I have to jump and make it immediately. So if you haven't seen your idea yet, don't worry. There are always probably at least 15 in the back of my mind that I want to make. So if I haven't made yours yet, it's not necessarily because I don't like it or because it doesn't inspire me. It's like herding cats in my brain, man. And this next one I thought might be really helpful. It was, how much did it cost for you to get started? My husband and I decided that we would put $1,000 of our own money into the business, and then any other money that we wanted to put into the business, I would have to make by making sales. It took me a few months to finally make my first sale, but every time I would sell, I would be able to put that back into the business, and so my first bigger drop, I was able to buy a curing machine, another printer, and so it took several months to first of all turn a profit after the $1,000 that we put into the business, and then also to finally take home some money. Since anytime I made sales, I was putting it back into business to buy more supplies, better supplies, etc. I started it in December, and my first paycheck that I took home was in May. And from what I've heard about small businesses, that's actually pretty good. Also, one angel of a human asked if I cut my hair myself and if I could do a hair tutorial because it's so pretty, which, oh my god, thank you so much. I do not cut my own hair with the exception of my bangs, because if you have bangs, you know they grow too fast and they always need to be cut. So I do trim those, but otherwise I go to the salon once a year to get layers put back in. Otherwise, it's just my natural waves, I'm sorry. They also asked if I would branch into rodents in the future, and I'm not opposed to it. I don't have any immediate plans, but I do love me some mice. Last wildcard question is, what was your childhood fictional crust? Ew, crush. Childhood fictional crush. Okay, I had to like dig deep in my brain to remember this, but the earliest fictional crush, I'm gonna say crust again. The earliest fictional crush I can remember is probably Dimitri from Anastasia, because I was obsessed with that movie, and if you know, you know. You're gonna watch me make coffee. One of the questions I got, which I loved, was why do your, not one, there are a few people asked this, why do your frogs have butts? Everyone has butts. Frogs have butts. I'm just being anatomically correct. We've got butts, we've all got butts. Serious though, they're cute. They're cute. Have you seen the little African rain frogs with their chubby little butts? The chubby little butts. I could not include them. Also, I think it's unanimously agreed upon that butts make everything better. We all love butts. I mean, clearly that's not true. I've heard people tell me that they hate that my critters have butts. By the way, I am making an iced espresso. And nobody asked, but my coffee order is a cold brew or a shot of espresso. No milk, no sugar. I have it black like my soul. Here's a good one. Did the dumpling reference expire or is it still in the fridge? I'm so sorry, dumpling lovers. It is not still in the fridge. I ate it, so it didn't go to waste. I did eat it, and I took B-roll while I was eating it for one day when I finally make the dumpling frog. Next is, do you put the cereal or the milk in first? I put the cereal in first. Do any of you put the milk in first? And if so, can you explain yourself? Next is, can you crochet, and have you made crochet versions of your frogs? I cannot crochet. I have only knitted before, which I know is different. There's actually someone on Instagram, Therapyonmyhook, her name's Lena. She has made a few of my frogs, like crochet versions, and I believe she sells the pattern. So if you're interested, I think she's done the strawberry, the chocolate-covered strawberry, and the pancakes. I should go grab it. If you're on Instagram, you've already seen this, but it's so cute. But yeah, we did an art trade. She wanted pancakes. I was very tempted to trade for pancakes, but I just said, look at this guy, look at this. There's something about the plain strawberry that just has my heart. Actually, I think that naturally leads into a question of how do you feel about fan art and how can we send you fan art? I love fan art. Never in my life did I expect to receive fan art. It's very cool. It's so fun to see. You can email it to me. I will put my email down below. You can DM me on Instagram. Email's the fastest way, but if you want to post it publicly, feel free to tag me. One great question was, what is your favorite food and have you made it into a frog yet? I don't really know what my favorite food, I don't know what I would consider my favorite food. I also think a lot of my favorite foods wouldn't make good froggers. Like, I love brownies, but I feel like a brownie frogger would just look like little doo-doo. Some people have asked for a cosmic brownie. That sounds like it would be really cute. But like a plain brownie like I like, I feel like doo-doo central. What am I thinking? A coffee frog. That would be one of my favorite foods. Coffee might actually be one of my favorite foods. And no, I have not made it into a frogger. It's a shame. Alright, people asked, what is a dream project of yours? One thing I really want to make, I don't know what's going to happen because I have a million plans and only 2 hands. I would love to make a spooky, I don't want to say Halloween-y or gothic, but a spooky version of the cake frog. It would probably be much smaller. It would probably be only like 3 tiers or something, but I would love to make like a Halloween version, a dark spooky one. So I'd love to do that. I was hoping to do that for Halloween, but again, we'll see. How much does the cake, almighty cake frog, weigh? Excellent question. We're going to cut to future me to tell you. It weighs 6 pounds. It's been so long since I've filmed this Q&A that we have a new cake layer, and so now the cake is 10 pounds. Or 4,570 grams. Yeah, the orange layer on its own is 4 pounds. So sorry this video has taken so long. I signed up to do too many things, which brings us to our next category, which is the burnout and reflection segment. Do you read all/most of the comments you get, and what is your opinion on comments in general? I love the comments. You are all so supportive and so sweet, and you have such fun ideas. It's really a joy. I try to read as many of the comments as I can. I try to reply when I can, but there's a lot of you. The only time I would say that I probably don't read or see most of the comments is if a video is really popping off. I'm very grateful because I feel like we have a very wholesome community. I don't get a lot of mean comments or hateful comments. There's always some, but I really don't get a lot. You are all just lovely, and I appreciate all of you and all of the sweet things that you say. Even if I can't respond to you, know that I appreciate it. How do you feel about the amount of growth you've had these past couple months? I found you in the beginning when you were small, thinking you needed more love. I feel like the one word I say over and over again whenever people talk about it is, it's strange. I am so grateful. It is incredible and amazing, but also just very strange. I didn't expect things to move this quickly, and it is strange to go from, like, in the series of a few months, go from kind of feeling like you're sending stuff into the void and not getting a lot of feedback to not realizing how many people are watching you. We'll go out in public and a friend of a friend of a friend will be like, oh, I watch your videos. And I'm like, I didn't know you thought much about me. And it kind of makes me, I'm like, how many people are watching? Like, I see the numbers on the videos. So, like, technically I know how many people are watching, but I guess they feel made up. The numbers feel made up. And it's not until, like, I get in public and I hear people who, again, I don't really talk to, be like, oh yeah, I watch your videos all the time. And I'm like, there's like a deep feeling where I'm like, do not perceive me, please. I'm putting the videos online. That's what they're there for. I am there to be perceived. Do you take breaks often? You should, because you work hard for us. It's very sweet. How do you keep yourself from burnout? And are you concerned about burnout? What boundaries do you have in place to help maintain that balance of art/work and fun? I am not good at taking breaks. I am very bad at taking breaks. I am very good at working 24/7. I am very worried about burnout. It's difficult when you have a fun job. I feel like it makes it very easy to overwork without realizing it. And I don't say that to complain, to be like, it's so hard having a fun job. That's not at all what I mean. What I mean is it's easy to accidentally work all day, all night, all weekend, not see friends and family because you're working. Because it is fun. There are elements that are definitely stressful, but there are a lot of elements that are fun. Especially like right now when it's like the holidays and I'm trying to make as many themed things as possible because there's so many that I want to make. And like, if I don't work constantly, I'm just not going to be able to make half the things I want to make. And it's not until later that you realize, oh no, I am only working. I am not being as active as I should. I'm not seeing friends as much as I should. I am sacrificing a lot of elements of my life. I should force myself to take a step. And I'm not good at that. I've never been good at that. I'll try to be better in the future. Okay, no. I will be better. What boundaries do you have in place? One boundary I have set up, which I am not happy about, but has been helpful, is I am not taking on special commissions, which is really hard because I'll get so many lovely messages from people like, ex-family member loves X, Y, and Z, and your frog would be the perfect gift. Is there any way I can special commission you to make this thing? And every fiber of my being wants to say, yes, let me help you. Yes, I would love to. It sounds wonderful. And I know that I am already overworked. I need to take a step back. That is one relatively easy thing I can do to not add to my workload. So I'm fully aware that this is not a sustainable pace that I have going. And so the longer this has gone on, the more I have started to like think about how I can take a little step back so that I can go longer and not burn myself. For context, my videos that I make, those don't cause me a lot of burnout. Those are a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to come up with a new frog, make it, and make a video about it. What honestly burns me out the most is the shop, is creating hundreds of frogs. The entire process of like stocking the shop, that causes me the most burnout. But the difficult thing is that's also where the bulk of my income comes from. So it's hard because that causes me the most burnout, but it's also my livelihood. Will you ever make tutorials? I don't know. The problem is I feel like teaching is its own skill set. Just because you're good doesn't mean you'd be a good teacher. And I fear that that would be me. I don't know, especially because I still feel like a bit of a newbie to Zbrush and sculpting myself. I don't know the proper terminologies. So I don't know if I would be a good teacher. Will you ever consider sharing more of your illustrations? I've seen some of your earlier shorts and they're so good. Don't get me wrong, I love the FROGS, but it would be nice to see the other side of your art too if you're comfortable. I would love to do more. I would love to do like frog illustrations kind of in my usual style. It's all just about time, unfortunately. I am currently already overexerted with all the stuff that I want to do, but I'm open to it. If time allows, I would love to. Okay, if you watched the entire video, thank you so much. This one ended up being so long. I know that some people really love long videos, especially for like as background noise. If so, let me know what you were doing while you listened. Leave a black heart emoji in the comments if you made it to the end. Also, if I didn't answer a specific question that you wanted answered, just leave it down below and I will do my best to answer any unanswered questions in the comments. But if you did stick around for the entire thing, thank you so much for watching. I hope you were entertained. I hope you learned something. And until next time.